So in the same way that we love children, but we're not going to let them vote.
Gender inequality in the pay gap between men and women positively predicts both male and female satisfaction in relationships. Ultimately, do you think that most women on average are more happy with modern sexual culture than they were previously, let's say 60 or 70 years ago?
I think no, but the outliers are quite striking. The thing is that having the kind of, let's say like mildly patriarchal kind of structure where the assumption is that the men do participate most in public life and do the bulk of, well, I mean, it depends on what era you're talking about materially, right? So in subsistence cultures, women do actually do loads of economic work. They just do economic work that is compatible with also looking after little children. So like the man goes out in the field and collects raw materials and the woman processes the raw materials at home while minding the toddlers and like sharing the burden of childcare with her sisters and cousins or whatever. The more recent model of the breadwinner, where the man goes out and earns all the money and the woman stays at home and does all of the housework, is kind of historically unusual. It's not that bad. Like actually it's fine if and only if your husband isn't a tyrant. But if your husband is a tyrant, it's completely disastrous. So it's like for most people, it's fine. For most women, it's fine. And probably is actually better than like the status quo where women have to still do disproportionate amounts of childcare and housework and do all of the, all the pregnancy, obviously, all the breastfeeding, obviously, plus going out to work, right? This is what feminists have called the second shift, that you end up doing 2 jobs. That's, I think, worse, actually.
What was it that didn't you say you'd worked it out that you were doing a full-time job breastfeeding?
Yeah.
You were doing 40 hours a week of breastfeeding?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the third shift.
Yeah, exactly. Like crazy levels
breast-based shift
of crazy levels of work that you have to do, which is obviously, joyful, meaningful, etc. But it like there are only so many hours in the day. It isn't feasible unless you have loads of money available to you or whatever. It isn't feasible to not have a husband, father who goes out and does all of that and still be as good a mother as you want to be.
I'm so interested in paradoxes. Mary taught me about a ton of them. You have the pill, it gets introduced, increase in single motherhood, increase in abortions, like paradox, interesting. Another one that I found from Candice Blake, who's over in Australia, is that gender inequality in the pay gap between men and women positively predicts both male and female satisfaction in relationships.
Yeah.
That the more unequal the earning opportunities are for men and women, skewed in the direction of men, not women, the happier both men and women are in their outcomes in relationships.
And stay-at-home dads is a really strong predictor of divorce.
Yeah, if the woman is the primary breadwinner, men are 50% more likely to use erectile dysfunction medication. Increases in domestic violence. The women are more likely to be on the receiving end of domestic violence if they're the primary breadwinner, because the male partner switches from a benefit affording to a cost inflicting mate retention strategy. If you begin to feel a disparity in mate value, you have 2 choices, right? You can either start to raise yourself up or try to drag the other person down, and making them fearful of you is a pretty good way to drag them down. But that's kind of dark. That being said, the patriarchy is so powerful that we've somehow convinced women that they both need to earn the money and that we can stay at home while they bear the burden of children. So maybe this is just a psyop from all of us to not have to do anything except for Xbox now.
Patriarchy clearly has like a strict anthropological meaning in that societies where only men are allowed to be in positions of power and authority have traditionally been described as patriarchal by anthropologists. We don't live in one of those anymore. We haven't lived in one of those for half a century now. But I think that there's also a different way in which people use the word patriarchal, which still to some extent applies to contemporary culture, which is that there's this quite deep-seated feeling shared by both men and women, and I think cross-culturally, that masculine things are higher status than feminine things. And that's why you see this great eagerness, actually, of women, now that they can, to participate in like masculine coded things, to be...
What like?
Well, professional work, right? That there's been this rush of women into public life, into traditionally masculine roles. There has not been a rush of men into traditional feminine roles. Not at all.
Because there's no status associated with them.
Because there's no status associated with it.
Remember who's ascribing that. At least 50% of society is ascribing that, like, on their own behalf, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, this is what Richard Reeves's book was so interesting, where he talks about HEAL, right? What was it, like health education, maybe like administration or something else?
Yeah, feminine jobs.
Yeah, for more feminine jobs. There are 4 times more female fighter pilots in the US Air Force by percentage than there are male kindergarten teachers in America.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, because there just hasn't been this rush for men to try and attain feminine status, right? And I don't think that our culture is misogynist. Right, like misogynists exist. There are some of them out there, but that's not typical. I think, though, that this sort of deep-seated assumption that women are, like, you're familiar with the women are wonderful bias?
Yes.
So this is the cognitive bias where people will tend to actually prefer to sort of show kindness and generosity to women over men in various scenarios. So, like, you know, you see a stranger drowning, you're more likely to jump into the water and save them if they're female than if they're male.
But both men and women are more positively predisposed to news stories that complement women's outcomes, or say that a woman achieved something, than say that a man achieved something.
Exactly.
And vice versa is true too.
Right. Which doesn't fit at all with the idea that we live in like a misogynist culture. I don't think that we hate women. I think, though, the way that women are sort of regarded, all else being equal, is as like your mum. Like, you love your mum.
You don't want to be her, necessarily.
You don't necessarily respect her.
Mm.
I think that the puzzle, basically, as to why women are so consistently regarded in a particular way cross-culturally as being, like, lovable but also a bit, like, lower status, is that women are considered to be kind of adjacent to children.
Mm.
So in the same way that we love children, but we're not going to let them vote. Right? I think that what the human brain does is it has this, like, it's like there's men, there's women, there's children. So women are in a kind of intermediary position, and very often are basically have kind of childlike legal status.
Mm. Which is why, I suppose, it ties into something that I've been saying for a while. Modern women have been taught that true freedom is having sex like their brother and working like their father. That's the pinnacle.
Because it's this, like, clambering up, trying to attain that masculine status, which for some women, particularly women who have a more masculine temperament, you know, like some women are more disagreeable and competitive and not maternal. Mm. And those women have done well out of the changes we've seen since the sexual revolution, in that they can basically, you know, live like their brothers now, pretty much. Most women aren't like that, though, and aren't made happier by trying to be more male.
Well, Chelsea Connerboy in the New York Times last year wrote that article, "Maternal instinct is a myth that men created."
No, that's not true. Yeah, right. Like, yeah, you can go around sort of pretending that's true until you're blue in the face, but I just don't think it's true.